Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness.
This is episode 79.
We hope our territorial acknowledgement improves allyship with Indigenous people within a reconciliation process. We're on the Haldimand Tract, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge the presence and traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land.
Hello, everybody. I'm Fletcher here on Let's Be Well Together podcast. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Isabelle Sinclair. What's on your mind?
Hi, everyone. I thought we could discuss hustle culture and how law fits into this specific culture on the rise.
Perfect topic. How would you describe hustle culture? What are some things on your mind there?
Yeah, my understanding of hustle culture is definitely something that's more prominent in the media, specifically in the sense of prioritizing productivity over downtime and making meaningful relationships. I feel as though many individuals, especially young adults trying to get a foot into the professional workforce, they try and continuously work on something, whether that be like a passion project, their job, even like working out excessively, just trying to always fit something into their time and not prioritizing any downtime.
And the way I think about that is almost LinkedIn culture. You always have to post that you're doing something and always getting those achievements. And I find it refreshing too to see the LinkedIn posts on the flip side saying, I'm not posting that I got a new job, or I'm not posting this, I'm just talking about wellness. I do see quotes like that. So if we're talking about hustle culture, is there something that you have done on your downtime to kind of, on a flip side, go away from the hustle culture?
Yeah, for sure. On my downtime, especially being on co-op term, working 9 to 5, I try and limit my time on my phone during the weekends just because I'm always on a screen, trying to prioritize myself and my own mental well-being by avoiding mechanisms to compare myself, especially on LinkedIn and other forms of social media. So definitely taking a step away from the connectivity of what is being online is definitely very helpful for me.
I agree. I would say I try to spend a lot of time doing things where my hobbies and passion lie. So for us, that might be some extracurriculars with our club, our Women in Pre-Law Club, or I know lately I've been into going to the movies, so I'll just try out different genres that I wouldn't typically go to. But I also think hustle culture could be positive. If we think about not being in that culture, you might be missing out on something. So what I mean by that is, being in a hustle culture where you always need to get things done and be the greatest person, it can sometimes launch yourself professionally and also mentally. So I know with me, I do try to keep busy. It's why I'm in co-op. I want to have that resume with 5 different jobs. And, I try to think how my life would look like if I wasn't doing hustle culture. Because I think that the dichotomy between us two is I probably am a bit more of the perpetrator of hustle culture. And then you are more so on the side of having that downtime. So do you have any examples of when hustle culture has been beneficial to you?
For sure. I would say hustle culture has definitely taught me determination and never giving up when things get hard. Especially in the context of our club, I feel like it sacrificed a lot of time on both of our ends, especially in terms of like personal time outside of school and outside of co-op. But it had a huge payoff for us. Like we've met so many people, including John, who we wouldn't have otherwise connected with without putting in the extra work and trying to make this passion project of ours a reality.
Perfect. And I also think with now tying together both of it, so hustle culture and downtime, I think there's different strategies, especially surrounding wellness that you can do. So I know for me, similar to you, I do work my 8.5 hours a day. And then when I come home, rather than, again, going on my phone, I try to immerse myself in those hobbies and do other things that are more meaningful. So with that being said, I guess I would ask you some other strategies to balance both sides of it. So if you're having a bit of the hustle culture and you're also having a bit of that downtime, how do you do both of them together?
For sure. That's a great question. Every Monday when I plan my week, I always try and set aside some time for myself, whether that be time to read, working out, and so forth. So when I'm planning my week, I write down my to-do list and everything I need to accomplish to feel good about myself in order to take this downtime. Once again, I always prioritize time away from my screen, time to ensure that all facets of my wellness are being interacted with. So I'm always making time for the gym, taking the time to read, to stem my intellectual wellness, and so forth. Do you have any ways to prioritize both hustle culture and downtime for yourself?
I would say being careful with social media, and not to not answer your question, but I actually wanted to delve into how TikTok or social media reinforces hustle culture and if it's either beneficial or negative. So I know an example we were talking about casually in conversation was how on TikTok you see a lot of motivational speakers, or if you're not waking up at 5 a.m., you're not doing anything or things like that. And while I do see a big benefit in listening to some of those speakers, it's maybe helping you get out of the bed in the morning and doing that task that you don't want to do. It can be very damaging with self-comparison if you hear that all your peers are working crazy amount of hours and you want to prioritize wellness, you want to prioritize that downtime. So thinking about TikTok and social media and hustling, I can see it as both positive and negative. And I guess it's hard to key in on, is it positive or negative? And it might depend on the person. So with you, when you see those TikTok videos or maybe YouTube videos from speakers, how do you take that hustle? Do you take it positively, negatively?
For me, on my For You page on TikTok, it's always a day in the life, and it's always influencers doing this. And back in COVID, when I first saw these videos, I was always like, wow, like despite an ongoing pandemic, people are still making the most of their time. Whereas now I'm able to recognize that these videos, in my opinion anyways, are incredibly glamorized and they're not actually taken in real time. So I have to, when I watch these, I need to take it with a grain of salt. So there's definitely some negative connotations with watching these, and they can be, I find they like instill harmful narratives on how people should go about their morning routines and their nightly routines. I know for me right now on the rise have been my 5 to 9 before my 9 to 5, which I think reinforces the hustle culture and always needing to be doing something. But in my opinion, I know that if I were to partake in these activities, I would be so burnt out. So I really think it depends on your values and what you think are important facets of your life and how to integrate those within your respective routines and not necessarily complying with the videos you see on TikTok. I think that's really important to keep in mind.
I totally agree with you. And I couldn't help but think of a few things when you said that. The first is, I saw this actually funny TikTok making fun of it. And it's a law student. He says, all the girls waking up at 7 a.m, or men are making the avocado toast before law school. Like, we're not doing that. Or there's a lot of, I guess, for our field and what we're into, law school glamorized. What you said, the 5 to 9 before my 9 to 5, of all the things they're getting done, they're going on a walk, they're running. And while those things are good, it makes some people feel a bit less than. Like, if I'm not doing my breakfast at 3 a.m. and going to the gym and doing all these tasks, am I doing enough? So I think seeing the flip side, so the videos that reinforce that, you don't always need to be doing that. I think we can think about how much you're missing from sleep, the importance of sleep. So Isabel, do you have any kind of opinions or comments on the hustle culture and how that might affect our sleep, which we really truly need to function?
For sure. I find that within hustle culture, prioritizing your productivity over sleep can be very harmful and instill like bad routines within yourself. I also feel like the more work you do, the more potential there is for stress, which will like inevitably hinder on your like levels of sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, how are you going to provide good enough work? And how are you going to, it's kind of like a cycle that is very harmful and never ends unless you find a way out of it. So I would say like prioritizing sleep is so important, and it's been proven in so many studies to help your performance, your cognition and everything like that. So I would definitely say prioritizing sleep is very important, and we need to start including these if we're going to post these videos online.
Perfect. And I think connecting to that with sleep, kind of the narrative on TikTok, especially for us young folks, is, if you're not up at 6 a.m. doing those tasks, are you really hustling? So getting back into the time. And it also makes me think, don't we all define success differently? So maybe for you, your success is you wake up and you run, and that makes you feel empowered. For me, if I woke up and ran before going to school, I would, as you mentioned before, I would be tired. If we think about, again, sleep as wellness, I would be just not my full self. So I think another thing to kind of quickly consider is with hustle culture, everyone defines success differently. So just because someone might be working crazy hours, that's their definition of success. Whereas somebody who might have their own business, their definition of success is selling X amount of items, and it could take them an hour a day, it could take them 20 hours a day. So how do you feel about hustle culture intertwining with different people's opinions of success, what success looks like for them.
That's a great point. And I would definitely like to point the fact out that a lot of people's values and definitions of success may not fall into hustle culture. I know that for pre-law students, pre-med students, like you need all X amount of extracurriculars. You need to prove that you're putting in the work elsewhere outside of academics. Whereas some people that don't require additional like graduate education, they may not fall into this hustle culture and their success might just be getting through the day. So I would say that your purpose in life or your purpose through the work you're currently doing is it's a factor that's very important to consider. And I don't necessarily think that everyone complies with hustle culture and vice versa.
For sure. Well, it was great chatting with you today about hustle culture and the definition of success and how, wellness and the sleep tie into that. And I can definitely see these topics coming up more on future podcasts.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the area of environmental wellness. Mike Kienapple loves being in nature, totally unplugged. Few of us do that in this day and age, so I asked to chat with Mike about it. Welcome, Mike.
Great to be here.
Mike Kienapple is a business owner and an avid outdoor enthusiast who enjoys camping, canoe trips, exploring, and his gym life at CrossFit Kitchener. Mike's lived in the region of Waterloo his whole life. He has 2 adult children, his daughter Emily and his son Sean. My wife Sheila has 6 brothers, and they had a great group of friends who hung out together since school days. So when I started going out with Sheila, I would bump into Mike, and that was back in the mid-'80s, before Sheila and I moved to Montreal. And those were the days of parties and shenanigans. Imagine all this time later, Mike has fallen in love with nature trips, canoe trips, being in the moment. What are some of the ways you like to enjoy nature, Mike? Hiking, canoe trips, camping?
My favorite is canoe tripping. Most of my canoe trips are in Ontario where I live, so I don't have to go very far. And I like to get as north as possible. I don't really consider anything below the Trans-Canada Highway north.
Okay, Algonquin Park, is that above or below?
Below.
Okay, so it's not north yet.
No.
For those of people listening from far away, most of us in southern Ontario, so there's a busy part
absolutely.
of Ontario, would think of Algonquin Park as north. It's a beautiful big park in Ontario.
Well, just look at the amount of people there. It's just unimpressive.
Because there's too many people.
It's like a highway on Canoe Lake at the portage store.
Fair
just
enough.
Gross.
Well, we went, both you and I went to the same high school, and we did a canoe trip
I've
there.
done my Algonquin trips.
Yeah.
And
it was busy.
I'd never go there anymore.
So you're going pretty far north?
Pretty far north.
And how long?
Say Timmins-ish.
Timmins.
I think everybody knows where Timmins is.
Well, a lot of people listening don't even know where Ontario is.
Oh, okay. Well, Timmins would be about 13 hours north of Toronto.
Perfect. And how much time would you dedicate to a trip?
I find 10 days is about the perfect amount. I'm like everybody else. I like my buddies. I like going for pints on Friday afternoon. I like my pickleball. But I like going away as well. And 10 days seems to be about the sweet spot for me.
Okay, you say you like hanging around buddies and whatnot, but these trips, are they with buddies or are they by yourself?
Well, I would probably do it with somebody, but I go too far. Like nobody's interested, and really none of my friends are into that sort of holiday. They'd rather go to a resort. I'd rather be in the bushes with the bugs.
All right, well, tell us a little bit about this. It sounds intriguing. So you're by yourself, you're far north, you've got a canoe. So give us a sense of what equipment do you bring? Are you carrying your canoe? Are there portage?
Yeah.
What's a trip look like?
Well, I would generally pick a loop sort of trip, so you don't have to be picked up and dropped off. So there's a starting point on a lake. You go down a few different rivers over the course of a week and a half and end up back at the same spot.
And can you find places where you can just leave your car parked for 10 days? And
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, there's lots of spots up north. There's canoe routes all over Ontario.
Beautiful.
Yep, it's endless, pretty much.
Okay, so you're going to go up for about 10 days.
Yep.
You head out onto the lake. What do you have with you?
I have a tent. I have 2 tarps, food, safety equipment, spare paddle, life jacket, the standard safety equipment. a few maps and a couple books.
Nice.
That's about it.
If you're by yourself, are you planning routes that has no portaging? And for people who don't know, portaging is you're between either rivers or lakes where you have to physically pick up the boat and move it from one place to another. It could be 10 yards. It could be 500 meters.
That's right. That's right.
So do you plan portaging trips or not?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's sort of part of the experience for me. Usually you look at a trip, and if the portages are over a kilometer, I'm not doing it. That's pretty far.
By yourself?
Yeah, because with one person, it's 2 trips for sure. So, the kilometers can add up pretty quick and it can get pretty exhausting. My focus is to spend more time on the water. I look for trips that are generally in the 300 to 500 meter portage and relatively easy to do.
And does it matter if it's earlier in the trip or later, if it's 2, like you say, 2 trips, because, for example, you're going to start using food and supplies, but is it really at least 2 trips every time?
Yeah, it's way safer. Especially if it's a place you've never been before. You want to just take your pack, which is the easiest thing to carry, and walk the trail. There might be trees that are gone over or bush that you have to go through, or you might have to cut something down off the trail instead of lugging the canoe first, and then that's going to be a bit of a nightmare.
So you have a knapsack? Is that what you're carrying?
Backpack.
A backpack.
Yep.
That's a great idea. I never thought of that.
Yeah.
Just do your scouting first and then go back and get your canoe.
Canoe's last.
Excellent. Tell us a little bit about getting to a campsite at night. So you decide this is a nice place to camp for the night. Is it usually along the water's edge, and what's it look like?
Well, I'll have the map and I'll have my route mapped out, so I'll know exactly how far from my starting point I'm going to go and how many hours of daylight I need to do that, what time I want to get there, and usually book in an hour or 2 for fishing, or if there's a little river that I want to explore, side trip or something. And that's how I make my way around.
Do you take any pictures? Is it just kind of a mental image thing that you remember?
Yeah, I'll take some pictures, but in my experience, they never do justice.
No, I agree.
It's just a picture, and it's just not the same. It's that lived experience in that environment at that time. It can't be replicated in a picture.
It's a really interesting thought, because we're just so used to taking that picture, documenting something.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do wonder if it means we're not experiencing it. So here you are, you go in the middle of nature and you're just letting each moment happen.
Yeah, I'll take my fair share of pictures, but I'm not sending them off very often. They'll be on my phone and maybe rarely looked at. It's not about taking the pictures.
You said you bring a couple books. Do you usually get to a campsite with a little time to read, or do you maybe wake up in the morning and read before you go? How does that work?
Generally, I'll get to a campsite maybe around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 or 4, set up my tent and my kitchen and get everything ready to go. Usually eat dinner and then just kind of relax and maybe read and end the day like that. Usually have a fire going at some point in time. There might not be time for reading, but it's nice to have something if you have, let's say, a rain day or just sort of a down day. And just chill and do whatever you want to do.
Do you bring a chair with you, or do you find nature's chairs? Do you lie down in the grass and look at the sky? How does it work?
I don't bring a chair when I canoe. It's just one more thing to carry.
Right.
It's just added weight. You can find something comfortable, easy enough.
I love that thought.
Yeah.
Sitting in nature.
Just sitting on a log or whatever you make.
All right. So tell us what making dinner looks like.
So I flip my canoe upside down and I have a table. So I get all my food out, everything scattered across the bottom of the canoe, get a fire going, and let's say it's pizza night. So I make my own bread, bannock, I guess you could call it. So I have a dough. I fry that.
So you have dough with you when you...
I have a cup of flour, teaspoon of baking powder, and salt. It's in a baggie, sandwich bag. So I get like 10 of those. And just mix it up, add water, just mix it up into a batter and
kind of
fry
soda
it.
bread.
Yeah, it's like soda bread, bannock, whatever you want to call it. So for the pizza, which is one of my favorites on the trail, As soon as I put it in, cook one side, and it's nice and slow. It's just easy.
Is it in a frying pan?
Yep, just
Okay.
on the fire. And then as soon as I flip it, I put in my pizza sauce, my cheese, my red onions, my mushrooms, my ham, or whatever toppings I'm having.
I'm getting hungry.
And then I put a lid on it. And so it kind of, it's almost like a Dutch oven. And then by the time the bottom's done, everything's melted and heated on top. And there you go.
I would never have imagined that you use your canoe as your table. That is
That's
such a
my
great
table.
idea.
Yeah.
And you just find a log or something to sit on and get
Yep.
close to it?
Yep, that's it.
So maybe the fire's going, and one thing I really love stars. Later in my life, I've liked to watch shows about the galaxy and whatnot. I like to look out, but I know that if you're far away from a city, they seem to look that much brighter. They seem to look that much fuller.
I would
like?
agree with that. There's no real light coming from any city or anything like that. It's not really cottage country where I go. It's usually pretty remote, so all you're really hearing are loons and birds and rustling of squirrels or chipmunks or whatever. And it gets dark. Like if it's cloudy and you didn't have a fire going, you'd need a headlamp because
Right.
it is so dark up there. If it's not a starry night, it's crazy.
Is it cold? Is it wet?
I was up in May this year and I had everything on that I brought. And one was a winter jacket. My hat, like the mornings were cold. You could see your breath. And
Right.
that was like
In May?
in May, end of May. It gets a lot colder than you think. You know, there are times in the summer where it's 20 degrees at night too, like it's going to be tonight. But you need to be prepared for all sorts of different temperatures up there.
I've never done a trip like you're describing, but I have done that Algonquin trip both
Yes.
with high school and another occasion. And when you were telling me about this initially, I had this memory. You know how sometimes smell is a memory?
Yeah.
Well, for whatever reason, I had this memory of being in the canoe on a lake on a beautiful day and just that light sound of the paddle hitting the water, and I could feel it pulling the water.
Yeah, I
and
know
that
exactly what you're
smoothness.
talking about.
And I don't know, there's something so peaceful and so at one with nature. Can you think of any kind of experiences, like the times of the trips that you kind of get those feelings of being close to nature?
All the time. Just all the time. One of my favorite trips is I go to a place called the Chapleau Game Preserve. And that's with my little 12-foot aluminum boat. And that's 14 hours to get there. Another hour or so at the landing, I put my boat in and all my gear, and I go camping on an island out there. At that particular spot, I'm 3 hours from cell phone service. So it's just a different feeling when you look at your phone and
And nothing is going to
It says
happen.
no service.
And you're not thinking it's going to come back.
It's the best feeling in the world. There's no people for 120 kilometers where I go up there. Just that feeling all on its own is pretty spectacular.
I think for a lot of us, it's hard to even imagine.
I don't
being
think 99% of the people would ever
No.
be in that situation where they would be there.
No, like where you could even be 10 miles away from the next person.
There's no cars, there's nothing. If you drove for an hour, you wouldn't see anything. And I'm still an hour past that.
So if I'm devil's advocate and I say, why would you want to do that? There's like nothing to do. You're doing nothing.
There's lots to do. It used to be a major Voyager route. So I'm on a lake called Missinabie, and it empties into Lake Superior. And it also, on the other end, empties into James Bay. So, back in the 1700s, it was a busy place.
Right.
Fur traders were going up and down that route across Missinabie Lake on a daily basis for 6 months. Not anymore, but I envision the Voyagers.
That's a neat
going
feeling.
across
Like
that
you're somewhere
when
where
I'm-
you can imagine people in the 1700s doing the same thing.
And, established campsites are established campsites. I'm camping on spots that were camped on 300 years ago and even longer probably. Good spots are good spots. Doesn't matter if it was 300 years ago or today.
Well, I'm probably crazy, but I actually, sometimes it happens to me mostly if I'm sitting by a body of water like a lake, like Lake Huron or something like that, or even an ocean, and the waves are rolling in and I'm by myself, I actually get the feeling that nature is talking to me in a way, that I'm communicating with nature. And so to those people who say there's nothing to do, I mean, you can't get that experience unless you're in these kind of situations. And it's a pretty amazing feeling to feel at one with nature.
It is. It is. Nothing to do is great for a certain amount of time. That's why, for me, 10 days is enough. It does get kind of boring at the end of my trip, and, sometimes it might end a little bit sooner, and sometimes I'm not ready to go, but I have to go. But the feeling of being alone, being in that environment with no people or no cell phone services, I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Well, we'll let people listening try and imagine themselves sitting beside a lake in a beautiful natural habitat with nobody within 100 kilometers.
Yeah.
Imagine what that might feel like. And while people are thinking about being in nature like that, I'm going to turn to the question we ask every guest at the end of an interview. In a context where we all have a lot of areas of wellness in our life, but we don't have time to keep them all going at any given time. So we do a mini wellness check-in. And the question, Mike, is, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of one thing you can do to foster wellness in that area?
Well, I can't really think of anything that I'm missing, but I am reading this book right now called The Kite Runner, and I've been reading that for about 3 months. And it's been such a journey to follow the characters in this book. And it's made me aware of how much I've missed reading. It's had quite an effect on me, and I find it difficult to find the time to read with all the other activities I'm currently doing. So it's nice to be able to do that.
I tend to agree. There's something about, I like to read, like my job is reading. I'm reading all the time, but it's like nonfiction. It's actually legal cases. Not exciting. Okay, but set aside even nonfiction, reading about autobiographies and that other stuff. When you're reading fiction, there's something special about actually reading. And are you reading a book or are you reading on a computer?
I'm reading the book.
Yeah, for me, if I'm actually holding a book in my hand and reading fiction,
curled up on the couch,
it takes me to a place that nothing else does. So
yeah, it's like I'm on that ride. I'm on that journey. In that book, like I'm in Afghanistan and what's going on with these people at that moment. I'm like, holy cow.
Okay. I started reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy again. I've read it before. And I put it down with about a quarter to go a couple months ago. So you're making me want to go back up and finish that book because I think that's a great thing to do.
Good.
Welcome to another installment of The Adventures of the Starving Artist. We're on the other side of the great big release that I was mentioning last time. If you missed that segment, the short version is the very popular cartoon Rick and Morty from Adult Swim is putting out an anime spin-off. And I was the metal vocals in the theme song. So for the 10 episodes in the series, and if they renew and do more, then that's cool. But yeah, I'm in the theme song, which is really, really cool. So I woke up the other day to a tag from Adult Swim and Rick and Morty, and my phone had pretty much not stopped exploding for the rest of the day. And people were reaching out and, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is you, and how fun is that? So that was pretty cool. It was nice to see that the project, first off, to see it come to life, because I've been waiting to talk about it for like a year. So it was neat to actually see it come out, but also that it's being pretty well received. Now, I'm not super up-to-date on Rick and Morty, the cartoon, or the fandom, but from what I've been seeing, it's an interesting split. Some people are all for this anime spin-off, and other people are like diehard, vehemently against it. So it's interesting to see how it might play out. I think I told you before, anime is not something I'm really into, but I can respect it. I see the appeal. And when I checked out the actual video that they put out, I can definitely see it. It looks like fun. I don't know if I'll be watching it. Maybe not every episode. Might catch one, But it's kind of neat. The coolest part about it, though, it's not just, I got tagged in the thing or whatever, but in the actual opening sequence, like the credits, my name's right in there, all animated and stuff. It's pretty cool. Anyway, that's my big update. Rick and Morty is released. I'm feeling pretty good about it. It's nice to see projects come to fruition. And if you feel like checking it out, you can catch it on Adult Swim. That's all I got for you today. Thanks very much for listening. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We love our listeners and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together and let your friends know about us.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
I recently interviewed my Gowling WLG colleague Liz Bellingham on a commuter challenge on an environmental issue. There was another thing that the Green Team started that I think is great, and it has to do with Move That Body, and it's walking at lunch. So Liz, where did you get the idea of people at work getting together to go for a walk at lunch once a week?
This idea actually came just out of conversations with a coworker who happens to sit beside me, who's also on our Green Committee, and we talked about both how much we enjoy being able to get outside during our workday, and that it's also easy to put that time aside if you have work commitments or if you just don't feel the energy. So then we talked about it enough that we came up with the idea to try to start a walking club as part of our Green Team initiatives, and it's worked out really well so far.
So how does it work logistically? How did you organize it?
Try to make it as simple as we can. We walk every other week. I send out a reminder email the day before and then an email the day of. We all get busy, and just to make sure that if people need a little gentle reminder that they get one. I didn't want to overload with emails though as well, so that seems to work well. We meet in the lobby downstairs, same time every week. It seems to so far be pretty good.
And where do you actually walk?
We're lucky where we are right now. Our building, we look onto Victoria Park. It's maybe a 5-minute walk from our office to Victoria Park. So,
and for people who aren't in Kitchener, Victoria Park is kind of like the main park in the middle of town, so it's got a decent area to walk in.
Yep, so we have kind of 2 routes depending on how much time the group has. We'll have a half an hour route, and sometimes we'll do a 45-minute route and just around the park, depending on time that people have. And
how many people are showing up?
I would say that we have usually between 6 and 8 people weekly. There's a core group of people who seem to come every week, and then usually we have a few new people.
And do you find that you're talking in little groups? Are you all talking? How does that work?
We usually start off together, and then some people have a different pace, so kind of break off into groups. But when it's a smaller group, we tend to walk together, which is nice. Gives you a different way to get to know colleagues. We do talk about work, but there's lots of other topics that we cover.
And what feedback are you getting from people about what they like about it?
I think most people definitely enjoy being outside for a little bit. It's a bit of a break. It's refreshing. It's a good reset. And the social part of it, it's a little bit of community building within the office. And now that we've been doing it for a while, I think people know what's coming up and enjoy that kind of regular little bit of community.
I like actually getting away from the desk at lunch to the extent I can, as opposed to eating at the desk.
Mm-hmm.
I don't often exercise, although sometimes I often do bike home at lunch and then work from home in the afternoon. I get a little energized by that activity if I do activity at lunch. Do you feel that?
Absolutely. I feel fresh air is a great thing for me. Not being inside, I do feel more energized, refreshed. And I tend to not have sort of a bit of a lull in the afternoon. I feel like I can, get back into it right away.
Oh, interesting. So you mean that kind of mid-afternoon, how you feel tired, you're not feeling it as much anymore. And for me, definitely, my head's a little clearer. So I find a lot of times if you stay too close for a problem for too long, it actually takes longer to solve. So I find leaving at lunch, having some downtime, especially if you can go for a walk or a bike ride, when I come back fresh, I actually have a better approach to the problem solving as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes you're completely right. We focus so much that overthinking or not seeing the obvious, and a little mental break from that intense trying to figure out a problem is a great way to just come back and see it differently.
I think it's a great program, Liz, and I'm glad you kicked it off. It was nice that you had that chat with your desk mate recently, and good luck going forward with it.
Thank you.
There's a thought. Popped up while running. I'm often talking about the nature-nurture debate. I've mentioned it quite a few times in the past. Kind of a different spin on it hit me when I was out for my run. The nature-nurture debate, as you know, is that people wonder if we act in a certain way because it's born within us. That's just who we are. It's kind of innate inside of us, and this is how we react in scenarios. What about nurture? I was brought up in a certain way, in a certain surrounding, and the forces of, my parents and the society and everything else. How much did that affect the way I react to things? And that's a debate that rages on, and there's, a lot of people think it's a bit of both. I'm kind of that mind. But then I'm thinking, well, in both cases, that's the outside forces. I'm still got a me inside, which are affected by outside forces. You often hear, I can't control what people do to me, what people say to me, but I can control how I respond to what people do to me, what people say to me. And so it's kind of food for thought. Yes, nature-nurture is an interesting debate, but what about me? And what about me trying to understand a whole bunch of stuff about myself? How did nature affect what I do? How does nurture affect what I do? How does my temperament affect how I do? But ultimately, I choose to believe that I can act in a way in response to those things in a way where I have choice. I know someone else might say to me, well, you don't, John. That's a daydream. You don't really have choice. You know what? I'm going to choose to believe that I do have choice. I'm going to choose to believe that understanding myself better is a good thing and worthwhile. And I'm going to choose to believe that even if I can't control some things and I can't control nature and nurture, maybe I can control how I respond to what the world throws at me. It's me. Am I?
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
Sheila, will you read that social media post you saw about the Buddhist monk and the teacher?
Yeah. So this I saw on Facebook, and it was John Perricone. Several years ago, I invited a Buddhist monk to speak to my senior elective class. And quite interestingly, as he entered the room, he didn't say a word. That caught everyone's attention. He just walked to the board and wrote this. Everyone wants to save the world, but no one wants to help Mom do the dishes. We all laughed, but then he went on to say this to my students. Statistically, it's highly unlikely that any of you will ever have the opportunity to run into a burning orphanage and rescue an infant. But in the smallest gesture of kindness, a warm smile, holding the door for a person behind you, shoveling the driveway for elderly person next door, you have committed an act of immeasurable profundity, because to each of us, our life is our universe. This is my hope for you, that by the smallest act of kindness, you will save another's world. So I thought this was really kind and easy to do, but immeasurable.
We have talked about similar things on the show, and we'll keep talking about it because it's such a great point, which is maybe you can't change the whole world, but you can change your world.
Yeah, or someone else's. And I just thought it's reminded me of how small ants are, but how much work they do together and how we can do things immeasurably profound if we work together and help each other, see what's going on around us, and just make a point of doing something good, like helping Mom with the dishes.
One thing I have to do is look up the word profundity, because probably it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. Immeasurable profundity.
Something you read that I didn't catch the first time was that for us, our life is our universe. And, I love watching these shows about how the universe works. One time I was watching it, it really kind of blew me away, which is we can only see so far. Because, and in fact, most of the time when they're using these massive telescopes to look really, really far away, they're also looking very far back in time.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
But basically, if you can imagine yourself at the center of a bubble, but there's a lot of stuff beyond the bubble, because of our limitations, we can only see so far. I don't know, it just made me think when you said that, yeah, like there's a lot of things going on in the world, but I see what I see. And that's a big thing we used to talk about in philosophy class too. The fact that how do you explain truth with a capital T, reality with a capital R, when you're only seeing what you see and describing what you see, and to what extent does that limit any one person?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. And, but again, what do? Do you take that and say, oh, well, I can't do it then.
Yeah.
I can't do it perfectly. So why do anything?
Exactly. You have to.
So many things we can do.
So many things we can do. And I like that idea of just look out. Just try and look for the good in people and something good that you can do. I think it'll make you feel better. It'll make them feel better. And it will just help our world
I think I've talked about this before too, which was there was a time where people were really ticking me off. You know me, people tick me off. And
yes,
it tends to be what I also remember. And so I did this little mini experiment that I think I've talked about, which is I would start to count in the day how many times someone did something nice. Like, so for example, he talks about opening the door for you, or a car, if I was running, letting me go when he didn't necessarily have to, and I was realizing that I was counting many, many, many more nice things every day.
Interesting.
And a very few amount of crummy things, but that's what stuck in my head. That jerk who did that.
That one jerk.
Right. And if I can tune into those good things, if I actually have those days where I'm like noticing the good thing people do and savoring that instead, I have better days.
Yeah, I think it would make your day better, and it would definitely lift your spirits to see people doing good things. I agree. That would be a nice experiment to do.
I think it was a great quote. Oh, just before we go, because we're running out of time, but I also talked about a George Orwell quote on an earlier show, and I can never find it, but I remember him saying at one point that it's really interesting that everybody talks about loving mankind and how few of them get along with their neighbors.
Yeah. Yes.
So get along with your neighbors.
Yes.
Right? If you want to love mankind, start small. Start with the people around you.
Perfect.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
It's sign-off time. It's Elise here, joined by John and Sheila.
Hello.
Hi.
It's been another awesome summer week for me, and I've really been enjoying doing activities outside. So a goal of mine this week was to try to do more not outdoor, but physical activities. So I've been trying to do something outside every day, like swimming, biking, or going for a walk.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's been great. And looking forward to this week, we have some of Steven's family visiting us from Ohio.
Wow.
That's
pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And is it their first time, Elise?
His brother has been here before, but his sister has not. But it is their first time seeing our house.
Cool.
Nice.
How about you, Sheila?
Well, I had a very busy week actually this week, very busy socially. We had guests here on Friday night, and then we went to an event that you were at on Saturday night, which was very fun. It was a baby shower kind of barbecue, and that was fun. And then today we had another social. So we've been socially busy this weekend. So that was lovely. And that's pretty much all I have. I've been busy at work and getting my workouts done, which is really good because I actually hurt my knee. So yeah, it's slowly getting better, and it feels like it is getting better, but it's a slow go. So, we'll just keep working on it. What about you, John?
At least you talked about doing physical things. I'm really enjoying something that I didn't think I would enjoy. We're trying to see if we can go down to one car. And the easiest way to do that is for me to find a way to work without driving myself to work. And luckily, it's a pretty easy bus ride. It's a pretty easy bike ride. And I'm even once in a while walking. It's about 5 kilometers if I walk. And I'm really enjoying it. It's just kind of strange to hear that. And what I was going to say about physical was when I'm taking the bus, it reminded me when we were in London, one thing I really loved about our trip to London, we took the transit everywhere. And we found that you're always walking, right? You're walking to the subway, you're walking in the subway, you're walking to buses, you get dropped off somewhere and you have to walk to where you're going. And it was kind of cool. And actually, I think I even lost a bit of weight because of it. And now I'm just realizing I'm walking a lot. It's maybe only 400 meters to the bus stop and then 300 from there to work, but that's an extra almost kilometer a day. And just finding myself moving and seeing the city. It's been a lot of fun.
It's nice to be outside too.
So enjoying right now. Now, who knows what it'll be like in winter, but right now I'm enjoying finding ways to get to and from work without driving my car. Really cool. In terms of social, we just had an event today where we got together with some of the other trustees on the Waterloo Region Law Association. We often talk to each other on Zoom calls, and it's all business. And so it was really great to just be able to chill out and talk to people about non-business stuff and just to get to know each other better. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
So that's it for me.
Excellent.
So is this a quick one, guys?
Very quick.
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, everyone, we hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope to see you again next week. Be well. Bye for now.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.